Imagine this. Cities still stand, but no voices remain. Streets are intact, yet they lead nowhere. We call this the apocalypse. You might think apocalypse stories belong to movies and novels, but long before humans could write, we were already telling stories about how the world would end. Floods, fire, darkness, judgment. Every civilization reserved a place for the end of the world. Because your brain did not evolve for happiness, it evolved for survival. 100,000 years ago, those who overestimated danger were more likely to live. Those who ignored worst-case scenarios often didn't survive long enough to pass on their genes. Apocalypse stories aren't really about destruction. They ask a deeper question. If everything disappears, what remains of me? From the safety of your couch, your brain simulates the most extreme scenarios, learning without real danger. Ironically, the more advanced civilization becomes, the more popular apocalypse stories are. Because electricity, networks, order, food, all can vanish with a single failure. We no longer fear predators. We fear system collapse. In apocalypse stories, there are no resumes, no mortgages, no deadlines. Only 3 questions remain. Am I alive? Who can I trust? Will I see the sun tomorrow? The end of the world makes everything strangely clear. You're not longing for destruction. You're searching for meaning, truth, and what remains when everything else is stripped away. Apocalypse stories are mirrors. They don't reflect the future. They reflect your present fears. Maybe you're not fascinated by the end, but by the moment when the world collapses and humanity finally sees itself clearly. For Earth, the apocalypse is not a theory. It has already happened more than once. Asteroid impacts, supervolcanoes, global freezing, suffocating oceans. Over 99% of all species that ever lived are gone. And you are not an observer. You exist because your ancestors survived collapse again and again. Famine, plague, war, climate disaster. Every time a civilization fell, someone endured. Apocalypse stories were never meant to entertain. They are warnings. Memories, knowledge wrapped in fear. If you forget how fragile the world is, the world will remind you. Look closely. What holds your attention is not the explosion, it's what comes after. Abandoned cities, highways reclaimed by plants, humans relearning how to make fire. Because in that moment you see humanity without systems. You live a normal life every day, but none of it is guaranteed. The climate is changing, species are vanishing, the planet is heating up. The apocalypse is no longer a date, it's a process. In reality, you can't control the world, but in stories you can foresee the end. You see who makes mistakes. You recognize fatal choices. You tell yourself, if it were me, I would survive. When laws vanish, when resources run out, when civilization peels away, do you share or do you take? The real question of apocalypse stories is, who are you when there are no rules? What you fear is not death itself, it's death without meaning. Apocalypse stories give death context, give sacrifice weight, and give survival a purpose. Maybe you'll realize, apocalypse stories were never about how the world ends. They are about who you choose to be before everything ends. From the perspective of the universe, the apocalypse is not an exception. It is the rule. Stars burn out, planets shatter, civilizations are brief flashes. Earth does not need humanity. Before humans existed, it survived for 4.5 billion years. After humans are gone, it will keep turning. You care about the apocalypse not because the world ends, but because you end. Apocalypse stories scale personal death into a cosmic event. Cities, technology, laws, money, they are not eternal. They are thin membranes delaying chaos. When that membrane breaks, you see the primal human again. In daily life, time feels vague. But in apocalypse stories, every second is clear. You know what matters. You know what doesn't. The apocalypse makes time honest. Notice the images you linger on. Empty cities, silent machines, streets without advertisements. That isn't fear. It's quiet. A world with no commands, no demands. No electricity, no medicine, no networks. You live again by smell, by sound, by instinct. The apocalypse is not regression, it is return. You don't want to watch the world end. You want to know, when every label disappears, what remains of you. Names, roles, status, they fade. Only choices remain. Maybe the question isn't when the world will end, but whether before it does you truly lived. If the world were truly ending, would you be afraid? Or would a part of you feel relieved? In apocalypse stories, no one has to succeed. No rankings, no falling behind. The end of the world is also the end of comparison. What you really fear is not collapse. It's a world that keeps going without you. Apocalypse stories erase that fear. If the world ends, it's not your fault. Not because you didn't try, not because you chose wrong. The world itself was headed for the end. Apocalypse protagonists are rarely the smartest. They're simply the ones still alive. Because these stories aren't about excellence, they're about existence. Money, power, status, they fail in apocalypse. What fascinates you is not chaos, but reset. Have you noticed? The most unforgettable apocalypse stories rarely end with full recovery, because you know, the world is not that kind. Suffering in apocalypse makes sense. Suffering in everyday life often doesn't. Apocalypse stories give your pain a global explanation. Maybe you can finally admit you don't want the world to end, you're just tired. Have you noticed? Every apocalypse story you watch isn't really about the world, it's about you. In real life, you're not allowed to be afraid. You're expected to be strong, rational, moving forward. But in apocalypse stories, fear is justified. Be honest. You don't just want to survive, you want to know, if the world were simpler, would living feel easier? No meetings, no metrics, no endless notifications. The apocalypse deletes the noise. It looks like chaos, but you know, it's actually a more honest order. You're not drawn to ruins. You're drawn to a world without people, because there no one expects anything from you. In apocalypse worlds, you don't need to be the best. You just need to choose. What you hate isn't civilization. It's the feeling of never catching up and never being allowed to stop. The apocalypse isn't an explosion. It's the moment everything finally becomes quiet. So what fascinates you isn't the end. It's a world where you no longer have to keep going. Your fascination with apocalypse stories isn't because you want the world to end. It's because in those stories the world finally stops. There are no progress bars, no ticking clocks, no life checklists you must complete. When everything is declared finite, life becomes honest for the first time. You no longer have to prove yourself, chase anyone, or pretend there's still plenty of time. From an evolutionary perspective, the human brain is designed to imagine worst-case scenarios. In ancient times, those who anticipated disaster were the ones who survived. Apocalypse stories are modern survival simulations. In a safe environment, your mind rehearses the loss of order, resources, and future, all to answer one question. If everything collapses, would you still survive? In apocalypse stories, the world becomes simple. There are no excessive choices, no blurred values, no endless decisions. Only the most primitive questions remain. Where should I go? Who can I trust? Will I survive tomorrow? For minds crushed by information and responsibility, this simplicity feels like freedom. What truly draws you in is never the moment of destruction. It's the silence afterward. Empty cities, buildings reclaimed by plants, skies without signals. A world where no one expects anything from you. There you are not a role, a title, or a label. You are simply alive. Apocalypse stories aren't really about monsters. They're about systems failing. Power grids collapse, networks disconnect, order dissolves. They remind you that everything you rely on is more fragile than it seems. Civilization isn't guaranteed, it simply hasn't fallen yet. And that realization is both terrifying and fascinating. In real life, suffering often has no clear cause. You try hard, yet feel exhausted. You follow the rules, yet remain lost. But in apocalypse stories, suffering makes sense, because the world itself is broken. That clarity can feel strangely comforting. So you realize you were never fascinated by the apocalypse itself. You were drawn to a world where pretending stops, where fear is honest, choices are direct, and being alive is enough. Maybe the real question isn't when the world will end, but whether you've truly taken a breath before it does.